You raised $2.5 million, 3.5 years ধরে স্টার্টআপটা রান করেছে, and then it shut down. What happened?
I have this brilliant idea, funding থাকলে ফাটাই দিতাম. So when I'm speaking to everyone, I'm thinking, wow, if I can solve funding, it really would solve everything. Fast forward like a year later when the platform was built, it's up and running, some people are raising money, I go back to the same people and I realize that funding isn't their bottleneck. I think there is a wrong perception of finding the right CTO. That was a $2 million round at a $8 million pre-money. That was big. So what went wrong? As a 25-year-old with 20 crore Taka almost, you just felt like you can execute anything.
আমাদের আজকের ভিডিওটি স্পন্সর করেছে মিত্র ফিনটেক। এসএমই বিজনেস ওনারদের একটা সবচেয়ে বড় চ্যালেঞ্জ হচ্ছে যখন তারা একটা নিউ বিজনেস আইডিয়া, প্রোডাক্ট লঞ্চ কিংবা ওয়ার্ক অর্ডার পায়, তখন একটা ওয়ার্কিং ক্যাপিটালের ক্রাইসিসে পড়ে। এই ফান্ড ক্রাইসিস নিয়ে কাজ করছে মিত্র উইথ রেভিনিউ বেস ফাইন্যান্সিং। তার মানে হচ্ছে ধরেন আপনার একটা ওয়ার্ক অর্ডার ফুলফিল করতে হবে, আপনি মিত্র থেকে ফান্ড অ্যাক্সেস করতে পারবেন এবং পরে আপনার রেভিনিউ থেকে ফ্লেক্সিবলি পে ব্যাক করতে পারবেন। এবং আমি জেনে খুব খুশি হলাম যে রেভিনিউ বেস ফাইন্যান্সিং এই মডেলটার মাধ্যমে তারা প্রায় 100টি এসএমইকে 40 কোটি টাকার বেশি ফান্ড অলরেডি ডিসবার্স করে ফেলেছে। সবচেয়ে মজার ফিচার হচ্ছে মাত্র 72 ঘন্টার মধ্যে আপনি ক্রেডিট ডিসিশন পেয়ে যাবেন। তার মানে হচ্ছে আপনার একটা সাডেন ফান্ড ক্রাইসিস হইলে সেটা সলভ করার জন্য আপনি ডিসক্রিপশনে দেওয়া ফর্মটা ফিল আপ করবেন, বেশিক্ষণ লাগবে না, এবং 72 ঘন্টার মধ্যে একটা ডিসিশন পেয়ে যাবেন যে কিভাবে আগাবে। মিত্র ফাউন্ডিং টিমটা খুবই জোস। তাদের সিইও অ্যান্ড কো-ফাউন্ডার কিশোর হাশমি আমাদের কলিগ ছিল পাঠাওয়ে, অ্যান্ড হি লঞ্চ পাঠাও রাইডস ব্যাক ইন দ্য ডে। এরপর কিশোর অনেকগুলো স্টার্টআপের সাথে বিজনেস মডেল নিয়ে অ্যাডভাইস করে এবং সেখানে ও আইডেন্টিফাই করতে পারে যে ক্যাপিটাল এবং এসএমইদের মধ্যে একটা ব্রিজ তৈরি করার একটা বড় জায়গা আছে বাংলাদেশে। সো ডিসক্রিপশনে দেওয়া ফর্মটা ক্লিক করে ওদেরকে আপনার বিজনেস সম্পর্কে জানান। এভাবে আপনি পডকাস্টটাকেও সাপোর্ট করবেন এবং মিত্রের এই মডেলটা আশা করছি আপনাদের জন্য একটা ভালো সলিউশন হবে। এনজয় দি এপিসোড।
Waiz bro, thank you so much for making it. I've been dying to have this conversation অনেক দিন ধরে, and আজকে আমরা ইংলিশ বাংলা অনেক কিছু মিলায় কথা বলবো, and এটা নিয়ে অনেক আমি ফিডব্যাক পাই, but তাও whatever you're comfortable with, why don't you kick us off with an introduction of yourself?
Sure. So thank you for having me. My name is Waiz Rahim. We've known each other for a long time.
Almost a decade now.
Almost a decade now. I studied in Taka. I went for my undergrad in the US. I studied industrial engineering at this school called University of Southern California. So I studied industrial engineering. Oikhane really got into the sort of like the startup ecosystem in LA at that time, 2012 to 2016. Graduated, moved back, started this company called Deligram, e-commerce company. And then most recently, I've started working with this venture fund called Sturgeon Capital. In very short, that's about it. Ex-founder, tried building an e-commerce platform, an omni-channel e-commerce platform, and now looking at the venture side of things, mainly focusing on early stage companies.
You've come full circle, I guess, because for the longest time that I've known you, you've always been up to interesting things. ছোটবেলায় when I started following you, but আমি চিনতাম না, মানে personally চিনতাম না, সেই সময় you were really into photography.
Yeah.
And তারপরে you launched this crowdfunding platform.
Yeah, ওটা ভুলে গেছিলাম।
Project Co.
Yeah.
ওইটা নিয়ে আমি মানে I was following you. It was very exciting. And then when you finished university in the US and came back to Bangladesh, যে একটা startup দিবা, I tried to follow that from afar as closely as I could, and it was very interesting. Basically, I'm just going to throw you into the deep end. খুবই তাড়াতাড়ি শুরু করে দেব. But the headline that I am purposefully, provocatively making up is you raised $2.5 million, 3.5 years ধরে startup-টা run করেছে, and then it shut down. What happened?
So this is 2016, 2017, right? I come back from university, I just graduated, and there's a lot of factors while I was at university. Like you had mentioned Project.co, Oitar origin was basically back in the US, I was helping a friend launch some Kickstarter campaigns. Why Athletics? So Why Athletics silver-infused activewear apparel that's antimicrobial, anti-odor.
এটা কি বেসিক্যালি একটা মানে
it was a workout shirt. It was a workout active lifestyle apparel focused on men's activewear. And my friend who had founded the company worked on the product development. I was a student তখন, second year of university, and I was into photography, videography. So he basically approached me saying that, hey, I have this idea. I want to make a Kickstarter campaign. Can you help me? তো ওইখান থেকে বেসিক্যালি শুরু হয়। সো সেকেন্ড ইয়ার অফ ইউনিভার্সিটি, just started living in LA. We launched this Kickstarter campaign. I asked some of my friends to help out for like free Chipotle and freebies and t-shirts. We launched that on Kickstarter and it ended up going viral and raised $250,000 in pre-order.
Wow.
Essentially, that was our first working capital to launch the first batch. So prior to launching, we were pretending to be a very large American corporation, talking to manufacturers in Jordan and other places, and সবার তো একটা minimum order quantity থাকে.
Right.
So minimum order quantity was $100,000 and we didn't have 100,000. So we basically made samples, did the entire crowdfunding campaign, used that $250,000 in cash as working capital to do it. And then we did a campaign every 6 months, every 9 months. So এভাবে করে 3-4 campaign করলাম over 2.5 years. So I really fell in love with the power of crowdfunding. And it was a very different approach to e-commerce. When e-commerce is usual, we kind of know about it, right? You have the Amazon model, you have the eBay model. And so this was very interesting. So তখন, I remember 2013, 2015 in Machkane, I thought, oh my God, we just raised like $1.5 million in the US. This is going to change the world in crowdfunding. Bangladesh ekta crowdfunding korte hobe. So in my sort of young entrepreneurial journey, that was maybe the first mistake that I had a solution in my mind.
But why is it a mistake? It worked.
It worked. We launched. We spent maybe 2.5-3 lakh taka in building the app software. It was completely web-based. তখন ওরকম Bcash payments wasn't really a thing. Online card payments wasn't a thing.
Right.
And when you speak to creators and makers, everyone will tell you that, funding is the main bottleneck. I have this brilliant idea, funding থাকলে ফাটাই দিতাম.
Yeah.
You know? So when I'm speaking to everyone, I'm thinking, wow, if I can solve funding, it really would solve everything, you know? But fast forward like a year later, when the platform was built, it's up and running, some people are raising money, I go back to the same people, and I realize that funding isn't their bottleneck, you know? They're starting from selling their idea to their actual product, prototype. It's just, funding is not the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Even if they raise 10 lakh taka, 25 lakh taka, 1 crore taka, it's not going to roll off.
It's the execution, the operational expertise.
Yeah, all that is. People wait for the funding, thinking funding, actually, I'll start working on the next steps. It doesn't work like that, you know? So, so I had that view into e-commerce, creative e-commerce. And then for my final year, because I was studying industrial systems engineering, supply chain, I had a chance to work with Amazon on their distribution facility in California. So oikhane I got an insight into just like hardcore logistics fulfillment. And that was very interesting.
So that was an operations role at
That was an operations role, but as a student final year project. So nothing like a full-time job or like a internship really.
But you still got to see the underbelly.
Yeah. We got to go visit the sorting facilities. We had to suggest like changes in their process, which could speed up assortment, increase efficiency. So over there, you're seeing like a combination of completely automated systems with a lot of human intervention. And you realize, this is happening on the back end when you order an Amazon Prime delivery for delivery within 3 hours or next day shipping. What is the infrastructure required on the back end?
How the sausage is made.
Exactly. So crowdfunding plus Amazon. Then when I moved back to Dhaka 2016, again I was like, nah, e-commerce e kichu korte hobe. E-commerce, what do I know? I sort of understand like the digital marketing side and I understand the fulfillment logistics side. And this was like the heyday when Flipkart was raising billions, Coupang in South Korea was raising billions, everyone was getting acquired for billions. So তখন it really felt like there is an opportunity. Bangladesh, because of low internet and e-commerce penetration, there is an opportunity to come out on top as the #1 e-commerce platform. And in 2016, our largest competitor was essentially just Daraz, which was still a rocket internet company. And any consumer you spoke to back then was extremely unhappy with the customer experience. It's an uncontrolled marketplace model. We have thousands of vendors and quality control, logistics, all that is very hard to provide that customer experience. So I spent a lot of time actually talking in rural Bangladesh. That, okay, if we want to build e-commerce for mass market, just Gulshan Bonani Baridharaর জন্য a food panda type of quick commerce service, wasn't too interested in that. I wanted to build something much larger.
And why?
Just because of how our population pyramid is sort of structured, like amader, because we grow up in these areas, we look at the largest, most successful restaurants and small businesses. But if you look at the largest tech companies in Bangladesh, they were always building an infrastructure level solution for the mass market, whether it's the early days of telcos, Grameen Phone, whether it's Bikash. It wasn't serving the person who's going to Laughing Buddha and paying 2,000 Taka
so-called
QR code, or going and having Movenpick ice cream and paying using a QR code. The mass consumer is domestic remittance and this connectivity between rural and urban Bangladesh. So common sense use kore mone holo je Dhaka shore you have e-commerce, you have offline options. Dhakar baire these options didn't really exist. So the idea from Deligram sort of came from there, that after studying the market, I realized that e-commerce customers, the companies were losing money on two fronts. Ekta holo the customer acquisition cost that you had to incur, digital marketing and offline marketing kore. The average basket size and margin that the e-commerce, the unit economics didn't make sense on just traditionally Facebook marketing ad spend kore. On the other side, on the fulfillment side, again, if the average cost of doing a delivery is 120 taka, customers not willing to pay more than 60 taka for delivery. Right. So you have to bleed 40 taka per order on the delivery side. So then I tried looking at Bikash as inspiration, that how can, and in India there was a lot of these models converting mudir dokans into e-commerce.
Right,
Kirana stores. So then I started really studying this model. I visited a few companies in India as well, and I got started with a pilot. Okay. So pilot te kibhabe korsi, our idea was that there are three things we want to solve for. Ekta holo je online customer acquisition is expensive and online penetration is really low. So it has to be an offline first customer acquisition. So we set up this first prototype was essentially like a tableter moddhe. We built an offline first app, which was essentially a catalog. Achha. A catalog of mudir dokane dekha gelo 500 থেকে 600 product say is available. A catalog through theke you could order another 5,000 products. Achha. So these are like a Miyako toaster, a blender, deodorant, the long tail of assortment that you won't get in a mudir dokan. And the benefit for the mudir dokan, the shop owner, is that without having money locked up in inventory, this person can upsell products and earn a sales commission.
Right.
So that's what the expected customer journey was.
So আমি just recap করি আমার বুঝেছি সেটা কনফার্ম করার জন্য। সো বেসিক্যালি আমি মুদি দোকানে যাব, তার সামনে যে প্রোডাক্টগুলো আছে আমি তো দেখতেই পাচ্ছি, কিন্তু আমি এখন একটা বড় ক্যাটালগ দেখতে পারবো অফ লং টেল আইটেমস, ইলেকট্রনিক্স, বিউটি প্রোডাক্টস সবকিছু, যেগুলো দোকানে নাই কিন্তু সে এনে দিবে থ্রু ইউ গাইজ, এন্ড হি উইল আর্ন আ কমিশন ফর সোর্সিং দিস কাস্টমার. Makes a ton of sense.
Okay. So from our perspective, it solves for customer acquisition. You have a hyper local referrer basically, and this person is acquiring customers on your behalf. And on the last mile end, back in 2016, 2017, there was Pathao Courier. There was Sundarban Courier, but not really doing last mile delivery. And তখন অত বেশি courier companies ছিল না that provided. There was e-courier, but that customer experience was always sort of hampered between the e-commerce platform, the third-party delivery service platform. They're also collecting cash on delivery জন্য. So we had decided আমরা সবকিছু in-house করব. We'll have our own last mile logistics team. We're going to control that customer experience. We're going to guarantee delivery timelines, say 3 hours, naki next day, naki in 3 days. And what we thought was, we wanted to build, Jaman Daraze, you have 2-3 lakh SKUs. We wanted to provide the top 8 to 12,000 SKU of products, provided within 1 to 2 days shipping at good prices, not like ekdom uradhura discount, but bhalo customer experience er jonno people will come to this platform. So that was the initial thesis. And when we started, we actually did a pilot in Kumilla. Because the thought was, je Dhaka eta pilot kore, it's not going to, it was just very a hypothesis approach. that let me form a hypothesis. If this is true, then some other factors will also be true. Just because something works in Dhaka doesn't mean it'll work in Kumilla, Gazipur, Narayanganj.
But this is basically scientific thinking, right?
Yeah.
Try something, have a hypothesis, see if it works, and
So then I'm like, but if it works in Kumilla, it should work in Narayanganj, Gazipur, and it depends, but it should work in Dhaka, you know. So we spoke to Kumilla শহরে যে মেইন ওখানে মার্কেট আছে কান্দিরপাড়, ওখানে একটা দোকান নিলাম ফার্স্টে। তো একদম বেসিক থিঙ্কিং, দোকান নিলাম, দোকানের ভাড়া ওয়াজ মাসে 9,000 টাকা করে। ওইখানে we made a hub. This is our pickup location, একটা সাইনবোর্ড লাগাই Deligram. Then similarly FMCG company বিকাশের মধ্যে we started appointing sales representative, SR. So again, people on cycles who will go from Mudi Dukan to Mudi Dukan, try to convince them to become a Deligram agent.
Right.
Deligram agent, people are familiar with Bikasher agent, Nogoder agent, etc. So actually 2016 Nogod chilo na kina mone nai, but Bikash chilo. We handed out 15 tablets with our app loaded on it, and we did a pilot. And that initial piloter metrics were quite promising. Based on that pilot, we raised our first 500,000 in funding.
Right.
So when I was starting the company, I had actually I had actually assumed that our family business would sort of be the first seed investor, right? So my first approach was, acha fine, এটা শুরু করার জন্য 4 কোটি টাকা লাগবে, which is approximately, তখন back then it was $500,000. এখন it's $400,000 or less. So I made this very elaborate pitch, 15-20 page investment memo supporting why this makes sense. And I presented to basically our family board.
And what? So for people not familiar, what is the family business called? And
our family business is Rahim Afroz. So Rahim Afroz, it's a 70-year-old company, and so basically, board kache made a initial pitch that I need $500,000, and after the entire hour and a half long pitch, everyone smiled and said, "Oh, this looks really good. You have our blessings." I'm like, "No, this is a pitch meeting, So then I realized that no. Of course I have their blessings, but funding wasn't going to come. And frankly, say my dad is in his late 60s, Akon is in his early 70s. So for them to really understand how venture capital works, how tech startups work, it's not supposed to necessarily make sense.
Right.
So they were like, "Bhai, this is not part of our domain. We don't understand this well enough to make an investment. Plus, financially also, the company wasn't in a very solvent situation." So they said that, we'll support you, but better that you go to VCs like Sony Appa, people who understand this ecosystem, and raise money from them. So I said, okay, fine. And coincidentally, the next 1-2 weeks, so this is an interesting story about how you can try as much as you want, but unless luck favors you, things are just outside your control. Ekdin office e asi, so somebody walks out, one of my chachas walks out of his office, and I overhear a conversation. And essentially, one of my youngest cousins is about to go for college. UK te jacche, and his parents, or at least his brother, is supposed to go drop him off. So UK visa, for some reason, my cousin got a student visa, but tar sathe je amar other elder cousin ba parent is supposed to accompany, visa ekhono pai nai. Hoyto aro ek shopta lagbe, but his start date is this week. So I just happened to overhear this, right? And then my chacha asked me, "Tomar visa ase?" Then I office chilam, I quickly checked my passport and I realized my UK visa 5 বছর একটা নেওয়া ছিল when I was much younger. ওই 5 বছরের visa is going to expire in a month and a half, or maybe 2 months. But I had that valid visa. So he asked, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I said, nothing that much. So he's like, "You go drop him." So I'm like, "Sure, if somebody's going to say I'm going to pay for your flight and just go to the UK, drop him off, make sure your cousin's settled in for 2-3 days and come back." I'm like, sure. I rescheduled everything else. I'm going to. So it was later that night basically. So while I'm at the airport office, তখন we'd already started like Deligram, early stage, but we had not raised our seed funding. So I told one of my colleagues that, hey, I'm going to be out of office for 3 days. This is from the airport. And he says, oh, are you going to the Bangladesh Investment Summit in London? I'm like, nah. He's like, hey, that's day after tomorrow. So I'm like, oh, really? So I mean, lounge boshe, I looked up that, oh, what is this Bangladesh? Sounds pretty exciting. I'm looking to raise money for Bangladesh startup actor. So kind of lounge boshe, I realized, oh, I know one of the organizers. So সাথে সাথে lounge, I almost myself invited myself.
Nice.
Saying that, oh, hi, I'll be in London coincidentally during this time. Would love to drop by. Look forward to seeing you. বেশরম ভাবে নিজেকে self invite করে didn't really give that much of a scope for that person to say that actually we're sold out, invite only, so I went to drop off my cousin in Sheffield University, and I went there thinking just 3 din asi. So I just had casuals. I had jeans, I had a t-shirt, I had sneakers. So thankfully you could still wear jeans. I had a shirt, but I can't wear my sneakers to an investment conference. So literally the evening I got there, Sheffield town center থেকে একটা জুতা কিনতে হয়েছে আমাকে। So একটা formal shoe কিনে, I got onto the metro, the tube or the rail system the next morning at like 6 a.m. So I could, Sheffield থেকে London, I can be there by 8:30 a.m.
So আসলে ছিল না লন্ডনে,
শেফিল্ডে ছিলাম। শেফিল্ডে গিয়ে ওইখানে আসলে আমার যে কাজে আসলে গেছিলাম আমার কাজিনকে ওখানে মেকিং শিওর that he's checked into his dorm and everything, সবকিছু করে I got on a train and went back to London. So why I'm saying this entire story is because I was trying to raise $500,000 seed funding, but if I had not gone to that event, I know event is sure I met like a lot of people from your Goldman Sachs to emerging market frontier investors. This was organized by Brummer. So Brummer are portfolio companies in Bangladesh. They were also there. So of course it was very interesting. Oikhane coffee break I met somebody. So the coffee kotha bolte I'm like, oh, this is an interesting person from Bangladesh. His name is Tanveer Ali. So while I'm standing there having coffee, I wasn't even trying to pitch him. I'm just trying to have a fun conversation, and we kind of hit it off. And then kotha bolte he's like, oh, you're thinking of doing e-commerce, you should meet this guy. So introduce me to another investor. So next day, I investor kache office giye, I started like pitching to them, and they were actually quite interested in this space. Then when I came back to Taka, I met up with Tanveer Bhai again, and he really liked the idea that I was working on. So coincidentally, he was part of this fund called Skycatcher that was one of the first investors in Pathao. Right, so it just happened to be the right place, right time, and Pathao in its early days, it was a rocket ship, right? And from within the investment community, whoever got into Pathao at anything between like a $2 million or a $3 million or a $10 million valuation, with like 500,000 or $1 million or $2 million, those first checks,
they made very good money.
It was phenomenal because Pathao went from courier company. Why am I telling you what Pathao went from?
No, but go ahead.
But at least from my perspective, right? So there was like, wow, these startups are actually scaling up, and Pathao really paved that way. So all these early stage investors were looking for, okay, what's next? Pathao has gone from being a $3 million company to a 10, 20, 30, $50 million company. So I really benefited from that tailwind. And people thought, okay, let's get into this e-commerce company. So oikhan theke we raised our first 500,000. 400,000 led by Skycatcher, $50,000 by Sonyapa as an angel investment, and another 50,000 from another angel investor based in Singapore. So after the family business had turned it down, basically saying that this is not our cup of tea, alhamdulillah, within the next like 6 to 8 weeks, 500,000, what my asking was, ended up raising that from complete either institutional investors or seed, my super angel investors.
How old were you?
I was 24 or 23 years old.
Yeah.
So after raising that initial seed 500K, the goal was to expand. Okay, we did a pilot in Kumilla. Let's now launch in Taka, the main large size, the biggest market.
So I just want to draw a few lessons up till this point. Number one is, even though you studied engineering, you were not a coder per se, right? So even মানে অনেকে থাকে যারা এটা দেখতেছে, তারা ভাবে আমি যেহেতু কোডিং পারি না, আমি ফাউন্ডার কিভাবে হব বা আমি ভ্যালু কিভাবে অ্যাড করব ফাউন্ডিং টিমে। The fact is you were very good at photography, growth, বিল্ডিং হাইপ, অনলাইনে একটা জিনিস বেচা কেনা। এই কারণে ওই যে কলেজের ইনিশিয়েটিভটা, ইউ আর part of the founding team as a growth person, right? So there's always that value add. You're either building or selling.
And the thing is that before we raised our seed funding, like when we had raised our seed funding, we didn't have a product prototype. It was based on a deck that was 17 pages, 17 slides long, made on PowerPoint. No, not even PowerPoint, on Google Slides. And the reason why that initial even 10-15 lakh taka lakhsilo is because I couldn't code myself.
Right.
So literally the only cost we had was actually hiring somebody with like 15-20 years experience, who, you know, was a costly resource. And looking back again, I would do things like very differently, you know.
What would you do?
I think there is a wrong perception of finding the right CTO. And especially when I just started, my criteria was, I understand product and marketing. I want to find the most technically sound person.
Sure.
So my filter and the only way to really find someone is through referrals. Like, hey, do you know anyone who's good at that? Do you know anyone who you've worked with that's good at that? So my leading question always was, who is the most technically sound person? So এরকম 2-3 জনের সাথে কথা বলে, it all pointed to the same person. And the person who I eventually started working with, he was like maybe technically the most sound person. But when you're in early stage of prototyping, you don't need the most technically sound person. You need somebody who can be scrappy and build it overnight, over a weekend, over a week-long hackathon, over a month, just building that prototype. Within engineering, you have your principal architect, you have your chief architect, you have your CTO. And when a company is scaled up to having like hundreds and thousands of users, the CTO you need then is very different from the CTO you need in day one. So if at day one you're worried about scalability, building a microservices platform, thinking about security and having your own fail-safe offline server and, you know, doing all this kind of optimization, you're not going to get to actually building a product. So
it's overkill and it ends up costing more. যেটা শুরুতে হয়তো প্রয়োজন না. It's like getting a rocket scientist to fix your bicycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
and then I guess the second part is ওই শুরুর pilotটা, the fact that you kind of used your own money and kind of put in, do you think, I don't want to put words in, do you think the fact that you put up your own money and ওই pilotটা নিজে run করেছো যে, do you think that instilled confidence in the investors in the first round?
Definitely. If you're looking to raise money to build that first prototype, you know, like angel investors are not going to come in at that stage, you know. The best funding that you can do is your own savings. Your own savings and then friends and family. Whether it's an angel investor or even accelerator programs, everybody invests in traction or product.
So you just raised that round. So Sonia Pa, Tanvir Bhai, a bunch of people committed to this round, and then what happens next? Ki hoy?
So we close at 500K. We start expanding in Taka. We grow our number of agents from just 30 retailers to about 400-500 retailers. And retailers at তখন একটা cost ছিল. We were providing that tablet, that 8,000 টাকার tablet, and we were providing a 8 থেকে 10,000 টাকা একটা signboard for the shop.
I have a question. So I forgot to ask, how do you make money?
Oh, so we make money by being a retailer. So on the back end, we were very similar to like Peekaboo or any other like inventory-led e-commerce platforms. We had companies like Marico, Unilever on the FMCG side. Because say Unilever je high-end products like Tresemme and all those products, oigulo product you don't get in a munti dokan. You get it at Agora, Shopno, Mina Bazar. But I might be a consumer, যে আমি কুমিল্লা শহরে থাকি, but আমার ওইটার ডিমান্ড আছে. So if I see that আমি এখানে গিয়ে আমি কামাল ভাইকে বলতে পারি যে আমার জন্য ওই স্টুডিও সালন শ্যাম্পুটা এনে দেন। হ্যাঁ, আর আজকে অর্ডার দিলে কালকে চলে আসবে, আপনি আমার বাসায় ড্রপ করে দিবেন বা বাসায় ঢোকার সময় pick it up. So it made sense. So we were working on a consignment model with all of our suppliers, and our products had margins anywhere between 15% to 30-35%. We made money as a retailer.
Got it.
And so...
Sorry, you were saying you provided the tablet and a sign.
Yeah. So then we scaled up to 300-500 shops.
Yeah.
Based on that second level of pilot, over the next 1 year almost, I'd been working on building relationships to raise our next round of funding.
Right.
So by now we've expanded to Dhaka, Gazipur, Naranganj, maybe Sylhet.
Okay.
So এগুলো শহরে এক একটা জায়গায় expand করার জন্য we have to get a hub. তো হাবের জন্য হয়তো rent advance ছিল 3 lakh টাকা 4 lakh টাকা, monthly OPEX of 10,000 টাকা for rent plus 2 people. So very scrappy.
Yeah.
All to control the final end customer experience. Chittagong e boshe, if you live in Chittagong and you're ordering on Deligram, a Deligram employee has to do the delivery, not a third party delivery person. So oita kore we raised our first sort of Series A round of funding.
Okay.
This was in 2018. So that was a $2 million round at a $8 million pre-money valuation.
That was big, right?
That was big. $2 million. And, back then in the ecosystem, it was essentially Pathao that had raised money from, Gojek and large institutional investors. ShopUp had raised money.
But not this much.
ShopUp had raised smaller rounds, but maybe in cumulative had raised this much. But from very reputed investors, Flourish and other investors back then. But the model was more like Meesho in India, right? The reseller platform. So we were one of the first early stage startups to raise a $2 million Series A back in 2018.
You were what, 20?
I was 25. 25 or 26. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
very impressive, right? The whole
Yeah. So we had raised 2 million, and once we had raised 2 million, then we started
How were you feeling? I just want to ask you, at that time, were you feeling ecstatic?
Yeah. As a 25-year-old with 20, $2 million is 20 crore Taka.
Yeah.
Almost. So you felt like you can do anything. You're going and talking to a multinational company, pitching them when you just felt like, you can execute anything.
Did you often just bank your app to balance?
Absolutely. So our probably life highlight was, so the $2 million that we had raised was primarily the largest investor there was a family office based in New York. So we'd met with them in person. They had visited Taka, and we got introduced to them through Skycatcher. So Siamak and Tanvir, they played a absolute pivotal role, in raising not only the first 400K, but helping raise the next 2 million. When that round was closing, I was actually in China.
Acha.
So I went to China to explore the sourcing / IoT side of things for our warehouses, IoT lockers. So I was in Shenzhen for maybe 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And fundraising takes time, right? So actually closing of the legal documents, everything had been signed off, but wire transfer hoyni.
Right.
And till the money's in your bank, you've not finished your round.
Right.
Ekhon China te, because once you're into China, you can't download a VPN, really. It's complicated.
Right.
So China te giye, we were using Gmail. We weren't using G Suite. We were just using Gmail with masking, email masking, right? So ekhon amar email okhane load hoy na.
Acha.
So what I can essentially do is iPhone e je notifications ta ashe, I can only see that.
Right.
So WhatsApp কাজ করতেছে না, Gmail কাজ করতেছে না, I'm cut off. ঠিক আছে? WeChat I'm speaking to my investors, right? But I'm in my hotel at night and I'm waiting for the largest investor put $1.3 million. And then other investors put in like another 300,000, another 100,000, another 50,000. So the largest investor put 1.3 million and the second investor maybe put like 500,000. So আমি রাত্রেবেলা চায়নাতে হোটেলে রুমে বসে I'm just like staring at my phone. Suddenly I get a email and I can't open the email, but the first line in the notification says wire transfer completed. And then we were using Silicon Valley Bank for our
Yikes.
Good thing we ran out of money before. They ran out of money. But my happiest, most ecstatic moment was just our Silicon Valley Bank je app ta chilo, ba website ta chilo. We were running out of money. From the first 500K we had raised, we were down to maybe like $80,000, $60,000 to $80,000. And clicking that refresh and seeing $80,000 update to like $1.8 million. Oh, wow. I don't know. I hope I can feel that a few more times in life. But yes, I was in China, closed the funding, came back, and then we scaled up from just 300 retailers to almost 5,000 retailers. But let me focus on the things that we had assumed. And like basically what went wrong. You raised 500K, you raised 2 million, you built a really solid product and engineering team. Mirpur DHS আমাদের একটা খুব সুন্দর একটা office ছিল overlooking like Uttarar third phase. And we had funding. We had really talented engineers working with us. We had on our operations side people who had experience at Unilever, other multinational companies. Had one of like the smartest people in digital marketing working with us. So what went wrong? So one of the things is that we had assumed we can beat Rocket Internet. Rocket Internet daraz kortese by providing better service and building out the warehousing infrastructure. Karon darazও third party shop courier use kortesilo. So assumption number one was that if you provide a better customer experience, people will come to you. Over time, like around 2018, Daraz got acquired by Alibaba.
2018, yeah.
So what we were competing with, like basically a venture builder, Rocket Internet, who's just in it to like make it and sell it, not be in it long term, suddenly got acquired by Alibaba, who's again, has a very long-term focus on sustainably building out infrastructure. And they have the funding. So me being a 24-year-old, having raised 500K and having 2 million in the bank, I'm thinking, okay, Rocket Internet কত টাকা raise করবে? I am much more cash efficient than them. So I just need to raise 5 million and then 10 million and Bangladesh e-commerce, Flipkart or we can become the local largest
game set match
player. Yeah. Exactly. But after Alibaba acquired Daraz, they started investing in infrastructure. And back then we had to like come out of that race. We can't, if Alibaba puts aside $100 million,
right.
like I can raise some more money, maybe 5-10 million, but not raising 100 million for an e-commerce play in Bangladesh. Right. That was one big shift. The second thing was that আমাদের মডেলটা unit economics perspective থেকে wasn't working. So what that means is that we were seeing growth on top line, number of agents is increasing, number of orders is increasing, but we were really sold on this. We really believed that Bangladeshi middle income consumer, the BCG survey of middle affluent consumer, is going to grow from 11 million consumers to 34 million consumers between 2015 to 2025. So we're basing our entire business model on these 34 million Mac consumers. Huge market. But what we realized in our operations from actual data, transaction হচ্ছিল, but repeat transactions were abnormally low. If we compared our market to other regional, like if we compare to South Korea, other places where disposable income is slightly higher, Fahad as a consumer who's maybe 18 years old, you bought a power bank today. You maybe don't need to buy anything for the next 6 to 9 months. So no matter how much I spend on digital marketing, how much I tell you, show you ads that, shop on Deligram, here's a 200 Taka coupon, here's a 1,000 Taka coupon. But if you don't need to buy anything, you're not going to buy anything.
But তাহলে কি দারাজও সেম প্রবলেমটা ফেস করতেছিল নাকি?
হ্যাঁ, they were.
Okay.
They were. And if we think about it, like fast forward to today, essentially people who had more money took longer to learn the same thing. We ran out of money much earlier, but even if you look at things today, like the largest B2C platforms are nowhere close to making money on a unit economics perspective. So that really is a challenge. Bangladesh is a consumer market. We were seeing, so why this really, really hurt our model is because we were a B2B2C model. You are Kamal Bhai, and tomar dokane ashepashe 300 ta apartment ase. So for the first 12 to 18 months, you as the local fiber of that neighborhood, you sold somebody their first blender. In fact, we sold a Samsung curved 55-inch TV for, I don't even remember, like 85,000 Taka through a mudir dukan. So the model was working, but the issue was the customer who bought that 75 or 85,000 Taka TV didn't really come back for the next 6 months, 12 months to buy anything, So in terms of when we look at cohort charts, repeat transaction, we were only tracking the number of orders per day, but we weren't tracking the repeat orders.
Right.
So what ended up happening is in the first 12 months, Kamal Bhai ashepashe 300 apartmente dhore rakho 100 ta customer had something to buy. ওই প্রথম 12 মাসে 100 কাস্টমার কিছু না কিছু কিনে ফেলছে।
Right.
এখন those customers were not coming back. So essentially after the first year, sales started dipping. And that made it a lot harder to keep growing. And once you've raised $2 million at an $8 million valuation and your revenue is not growing, you really have to like at least 4x, 5x your size before you can raise your next round of funding. So we kind of got caught into that where we thought we were going to grow very fast, but the real disposable income that of the market we were trying to cater to wasn't there. That's number one. Number two, holo, we could have still survived. But our next round that we were speaking to investors, a Singapore-based investor was interested, another New York-based VC was interested, and we were looking to raise $5 million. So we raised 2 million at 8. Ekhon me as a 25, 26-year-old, I'm like, nah, I have to raise 5 million at a $20 million valuation. And literally everyone is like, stop being ridiculous. You hardly have the revenue to justify a $20 million business. But we had enough like runway for me to try and negotiate, try to get speak to as many investors as possible from Indonesia, Singapore, Japan. And finally, we had one fund from Singapore that was interested. But then once we started the due diligence process, a lot of the things that we weren't tracking our metrics like closely enough, especially on unit economics. And this investor was basically had specialized in investing in marketplaces. So when we started due diligence and we started working with them, we collectively with our own investor, we started realizing, oh man, this doesn't look too good in terms of repeat purchase, in terms of cohort charts. So I'm like, our business really isn't as compelling as I thought it was as the founder and CEO. So I had to, at that moment, swallow my, whether you call it pride or ambition, and be like, okay, fine, let's just top up our last round of funding. We raised 2 million, let's raise another 3 million at the same round valuation, everything. And let's get more cash in the bank. So we had, this is September of 2019. And the Singapore-based fund is supposed to fly into Taka, November, December, and we're supposed to sign off a term sheet because they've never been to Bangladesh before. So for a $3 million check size, they want to come visit us, at least in person, do the signing in person. And we're thinking, our burn is $70,000, $80,000 a month, mainly in operations and marketing, tech. And we have $3 million coming in. So December থেকে ওটা got postponed into January. এখন January second week, they email us saying, there's some travel restriction out from Singapore. We're not able to fly out. We'll come next month.
Temporary.
So I thought January 2020, we have $3 million in commitment.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, till the money's in the bank, no term sheet, no commitment, nothing is final.
Real. Yeah.
Nothing is real. So I also thought, okay, fine, February, mid-Feb, we'll have our investor come in. And once this lead investor is in, we have other investors who are interested. So 3 million, and we'll have follow-on investors from existing, new. Shopkichu mile, we were looking at a $3 to $5 million round. So nothing in my wildest imagination could prepare me for the fact that, actually, তোমার যে 3 months runway, 3 to 4 months runway দেখতেছো, and you're expecting $3 million minimum to come in and give you another 24 to 36 months. And by that time, our goal was to get to operational profitability, so we wouldn't have to raise more money. And we were doing that on track. But mid-February, we realized this is not a temporary travel ban. This is the beginning of what we got to know as a pandemic, a global pandemic. And ওই Singapore based investor টাও সাথে সাথে cancel করেনি. They also said, আচ্ছা দেখি next month দেখি if things get any better. So we're like, what do we do? Do we run out of money? Do we downsize? So তখন মানে আমাদের টিমে we unfortunately had to let go of a lot of people because we were a team of about 155 people operating in 6 markets. And that first phase, like, we don't know what to do. Like, if the money comes in, we're set for another 3 years or till forever. If the money doesn't come in, we'll run out in 90 days. So, you know, if we're working together and at the end of the day, I am the CEO, my number one responsibility is to have enough funding so that we can survive.
The company can survive.
And as a colleague, if I can't guarantee that you're going to get your third month salary and maintain all Bangladesh, labor laws, minimum notice period, all that. So we had to take a lot of difficult decisions at that point. We had started downsizing. We had to shut down a few hubs, like Amra, maybe like Tokon, Narayanganj বা গাজীপুরের যে hubটা, one by one we started shutting down hubs which weren't profitable already. Our lead investor by March of 2020, a month into the pandemic, backs out, saying that this is a global pandemic. And back then, সবাই মনে করছিল যে বাংলাদেশের population density, healthcare infrastructure কারণে তখন America and Italy was getting completely destroyed with COVID. So everyone thought Bangladesh's মধ্যে একটা market will get completely decimated COVID. So our lead investor backed out, saying that we can't enter Bangladesh as a market right now.
But let me ask you, layoff, downsizing, এই মার্কেটগুলো থেকে সরে যাওয়া, warehouse বন্ধ হয়ে যাওয়া, lead investor falling through, from the high of 25 বছর বয়সে $2 million মতো রেজ করা, তার চেয়ে বেশি, and then এই টাফ কনভারসেশন গুলা করা, যেখানে সবাই মনে করতেছেন মেবি টু সাম এক্সটেন্ট ইট ইজ দ্য ফাউন্ডার্স রেসপন্সিবিলিটি যে কেন এই পজিশনে আসলো, ফাইন্যান্সিয়াল ম্যানেজমেন্টের কি হইলো না হইলো, বাট হোয়াট ইজ গোয়িং থ্রু your mind, because you did have certain plans, but from your perspective এই প্ল্যানগুলো আসলে কি হইলো না হইলো, what is going through your mind?
At that point, you're not worried about anything else other than your team, in the sense that you were living a perfectly normal life. You know, I convinced you to come join our team, and the fact that we had to downsize, so amra, unless we really had to, we didn't. Jara amra, we were there from day one. I stopped taking a salary from the company at all. People who were there at the company for a long time, we literally started taking less than half salary that we were normally taking. That helped cushion a little bit, but at the end of the day, that was the most difficult part. And I can, sit here and talk about how difficult it was for me, but actually it was difficult for our team members. So, Amra, fortunately on our tech side, because we had really built a really solid team, Alhamdulillah, when we had downsized, almost everyone got placed within a few weeks. So COVID or Machkane, no one really had to be out of a job. And we also tried our best to pass on references, because at that time, although we were going through our cash crunch, some other startups, some other tech companies looking for good resources. So that was the hardest part.
So I'm going to just fast forward it a bit. So that was the failed fundraising part. কিন্তু তখনও তো বিশ্বাস ছিল যে maybe the model will work, maybe this startup just needs another shot. How long did that go on, and at what point did that also change?
So the amount of money that we had left with like almost 3 to 4 months of runway only, after we had downsized the team, the objective was only so that we can extend our runway and get product market fit and raise some more money. So তখন we had decided two things. একটা হলো B2C e-commerce থেকে বের হয়ে আসতে হবে. B2C unit economics, it doesn't make money, and all of the investors are looking at profitability. And কিছু না হইলেও মানে if we can get to cash flow positive, we can survive.
Right.
So back then we had tried building, like switching completely to a B2B SaaS type of model. Out of these 3,000 retailers, if we can monetize with like 50 or 80 taka subscription per month, we can really downsize our operations to like under 5 to 8 lakh taka in burn. And we can generate at least 10 lakh taka in subscription revenue. We can survive. But COVID মাঝখানে ওইটা করা was very difficult. Because the customer base that we were working with is not used to paying subscription for anything. Number two হলো যে মুদি দোকানের average পাড়ার দোকান for online presence or a procurement platform, subscription থেকে revenue generate করা is
very
not something. When we had downsized, we had unfortunately also downsized a lot of our own logistics infrastructure. So পরে ShopUp যেটা B2B হোক মানে B2B মুদি দোকান প্ল্যাটফর্মে pivot করেছিল মোকাম, we couldn't do that because it was too capital intensive and we were trying to get to cash flow positive. So around the same time that ShopUp had pivoted into Mokam, they were running a pilot. They had not announced it as yet. At that same time, we were like running out of cash. We were in that same model for like the last year and a half, but we just didn't have cash to execute on that phase. Lead investor backed out. Every other investor that we were talking to basically said the same thing, that pandemic এর মাঝখানে একটা নতুন market like Bangladesh, they're just not going to come in. So because we were a much smaller team, we were able to survive for another like 8, 9, 12 months. When we stretched it, তখন একটা stubbornness ছিল that we're not going to die. We have to survive. Even if we are so we did a lot of things to survive. We started providing digital services to companies. Like as we're building a product, we had like somebody with us who was very experienced, CTO, very good like developers. So we even started providing consultancy to large enterprises. Just like the 5 lakh taka, 8 lakh taka একটা project where we have to audit একটা multinational company, full security setup থেকে শুরু করে everything. So we took that because it helped extend that runway. But after doing all of this, COVID lockdown, abar things opening up, again government restricted lockdown, we eventually ran out of money. And it was a very slow death. It wasn't like, oh, okay, today we're shut down. Deligram as a company basically still survived for a long time, but with like no operations.
Because it's never easy to let completely go, right? Unless you absolutely have to. Ar kichu nai. I mean, the highs are really high, the lows incredibly low.
And as a founder, like as you spend your entire like existence trying to build something, your identity becomes mirrored with what you're working on. So for me, Waiz money, Deligram money, Waiz. And I was a solo founder, so it's very difficult to go through all of this alone. So when Deligram failed, no one could convince me that this is not your failure. You'll figure something out. Like this was completely my failure. So coming out of that took a very long time. Just coming out of that cave where you just want to hide, you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to and because it's also an awkward conversation. COVID এর পর lockdown খুলে গেল and সবার সাথে দেখা হচ্ছে 1 বছর পর 2 বছর পর সবাই, oh hi Waiz, how are you, how are things going at Deligram? আসলে Deligram বন্ধ হয়ে গেছে, but most people don't know that. So it was very, very annoying having to repeat that over and over again to like 20, you meet 20 people at an event, 20 times you have to repeat. Oh, you shut down. Oh, why? It was so brilliant. We loved the model. Modi dokan ke mane Bikash worked. Bikash is $1 billion company. So, yeah.
I'm sorry, আরেকবার করতে হচ্ছে।
না, গত 1-2 বছরে অত বেশি বলতে হয়নি, so
okay,
no worries.
Okay, after Deligram, you got into, well, আমি জানি না exactly, I don't mean to put words in your mouth. You got into this different hustle bolbo naki hobby bolbo jani na of flipping apartments. Could you tell us a bit about that? মানে কি আদৌ হচ্ছে, মানে কিভাবে মডেলটা কাজ করে, what is it?
So,
and এটার কারণে I should add, you went viral. Instagram এ একটা reel করে, I don't think you even expected it, but 500,000, maybe like close to 1 million views হয়ে গেছে. Tell us more about it.
So when I was in LA, you drive through any nice neighborhood, you will see open house events. A lot of real estate agents are like doing like fully furnished home tours. And people are used to buying like a fully furnished house when it's been designed by somebody. Oy concept on a personal investment side. So COVID er machkhane, I started really looking at investments. So sort of like just our whatever savings we have. COVID er machkhane, it was a ZERP environment, right? Like zero interest rate environment. So banke FDR as a saving rakha didn't make sense. Interest rates were or Sharia compliant banks gulote bole profit, but it's ঘুরে ফিরে একই জিনিস, down to 4%, 4.5%. Inflation was creeping up. So at that moment, I had started investing both in the stock market and I started studying real estate. Ekhon, I don't have any background in real estate, but every wealth generation opportunity that we saw the generation before us do was all in land, primarily. A lot of people have made a lot of money by primarily investing a lot. Any free cash flow they have, any savings, just every year জমি কেনা, right? 10 কাঠা, 5 কাঠা, 1 বিঘা, 2 বিঘা, দূরে কাছে. I had zero background, and our family too, like we had zero background in land. A lot of families, like when you see your parent has always bought land, but my father was always scared of land. So I was always scared of land because I don't understand it, legal ঝামেলা, দখল হয়ে যাবে, এটা ওটা, ওই মাইন্ডসেটে ছিলাম. But COVID এর মাঝখানে আমি বাড্ডা যে লিংক রোডটা আছে, ওইটার সামনে থেকে I was driving by empty streets and I thought I've never been to the other side of like Gulshan Police Plaza ওই পাশে যে হাতিঝিল extend করছে, তো ওখানে গিয়ে দেখে আসি কি আছে. So I drove by and I saw like these new buildings that are just under construction. And typically Badda is a very like, the social connotation is like, oh, it's a low income area, right? But ekhane eto bor bor sundor building is just under construction. And then I found out like the prices of what is per square feet price. So lake er e pashe Gulshan 1 price is 15, 16, 17,000 taka a square feet. A pashe price is like 8,000 taka a square feet. But the gap, physical distance is only 300 meters. So amar kache it didn't make sense. Just as a layman. And actually, Baddate, if it's inside, prices are a lot lower because this is on the lakefront. I felt like this is a arbitrage opportunity because as a young like working professional, like Gulshaner bhitor ekta apartment afford kora has really become like unthinkable, like ekta apartment jodi 5, 6, 7, 8 koti 10 koti taka hoy, like how much do I have to earn to be able to afford this in my lifetime,
Right.
So I figured that this is an opportunity jekhane these micro apartments with our new generation who value like interior standard of living. It doesn't matter if it's in Badda, if it's in Kalachatpur, if it's in Gulshan. So ওই prestige তো আছেই, ওই prestige if you look at the new Gen Z people, all the prestige matter is not, it's arrogance basically.
But Badda is still pretty convenient, right?
It's convenient. It's connected on Hathijil. With a car you can go in and out of Gulshan, you can go Dhanmondi side Hathijil through. It makes perfect sense. So then I started getting into this thought that, okay, fine, savings থেকে if we can put in a down payment, and interior if I can do it up completely my way. So Bangladeshi developers also, they have a same formula, and the formula ta holo apartment e ঢুকে ডান পাশে formal living, সোজা একটা dining table, ওখান থেকে 2টা বা 3টা bedroom opens up into that dining room, and that's the and a dining room এর মাঝখানে একটা কয়েকটা খ্যাত টাইলস লাগে, একটা বেসিন হবে. So that's a formula that everybody uses to sell apartments very fast. So I figured, I'm not a developer, I don't have to sell 20 apartments. I want to try and sell one apartment. So I redid the entire layout to have like an open concept, so open kitchen and all that, and it took time. Like kajer majkhane pore weekends I would oversee all the work, and then I made some nice videos, and it took some time, but eventually I found somebody who came and bought that. And then from that sale proceed, I bought another apartment. Again, same thing, where you buy it at construction stage with the objective that before all the walls and layout is finalized, I have a close friend who's an architect, so tar sathe pura layout redo kore I myself went and bought all the materials, starting from the marble to quartz to fittings, designed everything on my iPad, just as like a creative outlet, and then basically looking to sell it. And when it sells, I'll basically try and find another apartment to try and buy it while it's under construction and redo it completely my way.
Could you share with us koto din legechilo from start to finish of flipping the first one, and if you can, what percentage was like actual cost versus what did you profit out of it, like kirokum labh?
So ekhane the profitability part is so timeline, the first apartment took about 18 months. So in my mind, I thought this was going to be like a 6-month, 12-month thing, right? But actually, it takes a lot of time to do construction related, any civil work. And second of all, it takes even longer to try and sell an apartment. In terms of the profitability of flipping apartments, I think it's very difficult because COVID or মাঝখান থেকে, when I started doing this, it was like right in the middle of COVID. But after that, construction, material prices, everything, inflation has really shot up. Ekhon, looking back, it's difficult to tell how much of the value addition, say if apartment prices, say if I was able to buy it at 100 টাকা and I sold it for 130 টাকা বা 140 টাকা, overall apartments price কিন্তু 130-140 টাকা বেড়ে গেছে, because rod prices have gone up, cement prices have gone up, land prices have gone up.
Right.
So I don't know how repeatable this is in terms of it being worthwhile, but it was more worthwhile than leaving money in a bank as FDR.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it beat, let's say, 4 or 5% of the bank, but because এর মধ্যে মেটেরিয়ালস আর ল্যান্ডের প্রাইস বেড়ে গেছে, বলা যাচ্ছে না যে পুরোপুরি প্রফিটটাই হচ্ছে because you retrofitted it and like you did
profit definitely আসে, but once you factor in your own time, effort, the time it takes to do it, I'm not sure if it's very lucrative or not.
তাইলে কি আর করবা?
জানি না, advice we hear like from like previous generation of entrepreneurs is, and things like this is, you make money when you buy, not when you sell.
Make money.
So anybody who is in wholesale or in retail, the objective is you have to buy at such a good price that it's guaranteed to be profitable.
Right.
So it's very hard because you see a lot of apartments, but it's very hard to find an apartment where you walk in and you think, oh, this is, you can visualize this being very amazing, and it's a really good price.
So do you think the price of, let's say, buying it and then the work that you've done, how much value do you think percentage wise can you add? Do you think 10-15% price add inflate kora ba barano jabe just by making it really nice, adding your aesthetic touch?
Yeah, minimum that's the difficult thing about consumer mindset in Bangladesh, because say as a customer, when I people really break down things into its material cost. you know? There's very few customers who will be like, oh, I really like this as it is, this design and everything. I'm happy to pay a premium. লোকজন এমন এসেও জিজ্ঞেস করছে আচ্ছা এখানে কি গর্জন কাঠ ইউজ করছেন নাকি কি কাঠ ইউজ করছেন, এটা তো পার স্কোয়ার ফিট বা পার সিএফটি এত টাকা, এখানে টাইলস আরেকের টাইল হলো পার স্কোয়ার ফিট 80 টাকা, চাইনিজ ইম্পোর্টেড টাইল 150 টাকা। সো anyone from a real estate industry, when they're coming to buy an apartment, they're really looking at the material prices of everything. So people aren't really used to paying, people don't want to, and Shababik, you don't want to pay a premium for just good design. But thankfully, like say, out of the million people who saw the apartment, I just need to find one person who thinks it's worth it. You know? But as a business, I don't think it's scalable. I mean, if I had that headache that, oh, I have 5-10 apartments to try and sell, it's not scalable. Right?
No, I hear you. I think ঘুরে ফিরে it's coming back to that Bangladeshi affluent customer. Like, is there a person or is there a big enough group of people that are design, aesthetics, egular jonno they're willing to pay that premium, willing to pay that, go that extra mile? Seems like we're not there yet per se at scale. That actually brings me to my next question, which is recently in your new role as an investor at Sturgeon Capital, you obviously do early stage venture capital investments, but you also kind of do these thought pieces, ektam porlam, which is where are Bangladesh's digital consumers? Could you tell me what it is about?
Right. So what I wanted to do is that when we're fundraising as founders, every single pitch deck, you'll see this, একটা দুইটা statistics সবার আছে. 8th largest market in the world, 170 million people, and BCG predicts that our Mac consumers will go from 11 to 34 million people by 2025. 2025 is less than a year away, right? So ঠিক আছে, 34 million না হলে where are these 25 million digital consumers, right?
এখন কত আছে?
So এখন এটা বলা খুব difficult. বলা খুব difficult. What I go by is like reference figures, you know.
কেন এটা published stats নাই যে বাংলাদেশে digital consumer কয়জন?
না, any study like this is no criticism of reporting authorities, but যেমন বাংলাদেশে BTRC data is 110 million internet consumers.
Okay.
ঠিক আছে, এখন এখানে most pitch decks that you see trying to raise money, it'll show 110 million internet users.
Okay.
7th largest internet user in the entire world, etc. But then you try to dig deeper. So what does this mean? Where are these 110 million people? এটা definitionটা কোথাও লেখা নাই. If you dig deep enough, like Grameenphone, which is a publicly listed company, they're using this definition, BTRC, or the fine printer, you find what is the definition? It's anybody who has used 125 kilobytes of data in the last 90 days.
125 কিলোবাইট দিয়ে কি হয়?
So একটা
কিছু হয় না।
আমি যদি তোমাকে একটা ফটো পাঠাই হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে, that's minimum like 1-2 megabytes
minimum.
So 125 kilobytes is literally ভুলে একটা রিংটোনও যদি ডাউনলোড করে ফেলি একটা ফিচার ফোনে, even that is in megabytes, it's not in kilobytes, right? So these are what we call vanity metrics. These are not lies. It's there, but it doesn't really mean anything. But if you go by how many 3G, 4G users are there, and not only 3G, 4G SIM cards, if you create a metric that how many 3G users use at least like 5 gigabytes of data a month, that pie gets a lot smaller. So things that I look at, for somebody to be considered digital consumer, Bangladesh context, what do you have to do? The largest payment wallet is Bikash. I'm assuming you have a Bikash account. Bikash mobile app ta ase. Second of all, you order in food, either on Foodpanda or Pathao Food. And third, maybe you use Pathao or Uber. So what I like to do is try and collate the monthly active users, the monthly transacting users across all of these different platforms and come to a figure. That figure, when I look at it, is just about like 1 million to 4 million users. Very, very small monthly active users. So if you ask me, this is the size of the digital consumer market in Bangladesh today. And this will grow. It's not like this will not grow, but even if it grows at 30% year on year, 25% year on year, it's not going to go from 4 million to 30 million in a matter of months.
Right.
If it grows.
এই কিছু ডেটা তো আসলে পাবলিক, রাইট? এই লেটস সে বাংলাদেশ ব্যাংকের ওয়েবসাইটে গেলে
না, এগুলো মানে পাবলিক ডেটা অনেক লিমিটেড। এটা সে ইউ ওয়ার্ক অ্যাট দিস কোম্পানি, আমি কথা বলে I can try and find out আচ্ছা roughly monthly transacting user কিরকম,
বুঝছি,
you know.
বাট ওই যে বিকাশের এমএফএস নাম্বারস গুলো তো পাবলিক নাকি?
হ্যাঁ, বিকাশের নাম্বারস আর পাবলিক, বিকাশের মান্থলি অ্যাক্টিভ ইউজার্স পাবলিক, বাট তাদের ডেফিনিশন अगेन বিকাশের মান্থলি অ্যাক্টিভ ইউজার ইজ মেইনলি সেন্ড মানি।
So app necessarily na.
Nah. So if you look at Bikash's app installs on iOS and Android, OTA will also give a nice big figure, but it's only after talking to like the merchant team and money to get an idea of how many people are actually spending more than 3,000 Taka on make payment. So that number is quite small,
right,
still. And because these are publicly listed companies, man, I don't want to share the number.
Yeah.
But evabhe kore kore you can dissect. Like for example, if a friend of mine works at RedX, you know, you can get a size of the industry by asking, এখন per day e-commerce deliveries আপনারা কিরকম handle করেন? So you're not asking for an exact figure, but they'll say, oh, we cover 40 to 60,000.
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine. এটার মধ্যে like of what percentage of your orders are say Daraz. So ওখান থেকে back calculate করে you can figure out, and if you can speak to somebody at Daraz and say, oh, আপনার third party courier দের মধ্যে how much do you allocate to say RedX versus Pata Courier versus your in-house, ওখান থেকে মানে you can collate and back calculate these figures and figure out, oh, okay, fine, they probably only do like 60 or 80 or 100,000 deliveries per day.
I love how you've kind of social engineering করে পুরো জিনিসটা just বের করে।
Yeah, because that's the only way. Bangladesh Bank has statistics on how many debit card users there are, how many credit card users there are, and those are credit card users বলতে গেলে নাই বাংলাদেশে।
Right.
Debit card users একটা ভালো amount আছে, but there are more MFS account holders than debit card holders. I might be wrong, but
হতে পারে।
So এভাবে করে, so my thesis is that Bangladesh as a market, 170 people there মধ্যে, your sort of cream of the consumers, people who have disposable income, that is anywhere between like 2 to 8 million consumers, right? They're buying handsets, they're eating out, they're ordering in Food Panda-te.
Okay. So এটা হচ্ছে middle and affluent class নাকি?
Yeah, this is the middle and affluent class.
Okay.
And so there's one thing that I say when like a very things অনেক কিছু when you meet first-time founders, they have that naive optimism, right? So I don't want to be the person to crush that naive optimism, right? So when somebody says, oh, 170 million, there's so many people, huge market, So if I give a comparison that people understand, it's basically there's two types of restaurants in Bangladesh. You have your Star Kebab and you have your Izumi. Both are great businesses. Star Kebab is more scalable and has multiple locations, cash flow positive. Izumi has one location, but still profitable, still cash flow positive. And if you think of all restaurants across Taka, any restaurant that's trying to cater somewhere in the middle doesn't end up surviving. So your price point, say even a great restaurant like Yamcha, the average per person ticket price is quite affordable, you know? And then you look at other really good restaurants like Izumi, Red Chamber. They're all really at that high price point where if you go in, you have to spend minimum 1,500 per person up to like 3,000, you know, like limit, right? But these are completely two different segments. So whenever somebody's building out a B2C platform, it could be anything. It could be B2C, a direct-to-consumer e-commerce platform. That segmentation is really important. Are you driving a value for money, high-quality product, or are you really trying to provide like a brand with extremely high margin, low scalability? Most businesses think that market that goes to Izumi and Red Chamber is huge. But it's actually not. At a restaurant ke sustain korar jonno, you only need to fill like 30 headcount per night, you know. But if you try to build like a D2C e-commerce brand and you're thinking that, I add up the top 10 restaurants, there's say 500 people that dine out every Friday at these top restaurants. That's the size of your market. It's 500, you triple that, it's 1,500 people.
A very realistic look at this. I want to ask you about one more prediction. Maybe we can just speed run through this. At the beginning of the year, January, you posted about some economic predictions for 2024. I've read some of it, and some of it seems to be playing out. Inflation niye chilo, tax niye ase, onek kichu. Could you just speed run us through that?
So amar nijo mone nai, and I try not to be a guru or being a predictor because I'm not an economist, but I work very closely with like opening LCs, with banks and things like that. So the few things that if I recall, ekta holo that our dollar rate, that for a very, very long time, the dollar was artificially sort of like suppressed at a fixed exchange rate. Other similar emerging market currencies, I'm not comparing it to say what happened to Pakistan in the last like 18 months, but just overall emerging markets in general have depreciated by, let's say, average 10% year on year over the last few years. But oy same rate Taka had not depreciated. And so what ended up happening is post-election, when the governments moved to sort of like a crawling peg system, this desire to keep the dollar at a very affordable rate came at a cost of us burning through our reserves.
Right.
Because if you look at just 18 or 24 months ago, Daily Star front page was $48 billion highest ever reserve, Bangladesh Bank. Yeah. So in a matter of 18 to 24 months, how do you go from $48 billion to under $20 billion? এখানে ঠিক আছে রিপোর্টিং এ ক্রাইটেরিয়াটা একটু চেঞ্জ করা হয়েছে and লোকজন এমনি বলবে ও এত করাপশন হচ্ছে all the টাকা চলে গেছে. It's not that. It's just like simple macro that while other emerging markets had depreciated, we didn't. So this has put a pressure on the dollar, and a problemটা এখনো solve হয়নি. এখনো market companies that are trying to open LCs are still not getting enough dollars. So dollars gone up from 111 to 117 Taka. It's very difficult to say price thekeo are companies being able to open LCs. If they're not, it'll continue put an upward pressure on the dollar going up. At the same time, if you are a remittance earner living in Dubai, you're sending over $1,000. The government, for a long time, there was a big difference between the black market and the official. Even after all remittance report incentive payments, there was that gap. So a lot of policy level corrections still have to take place, and I don't know, the dollar is going to depreciate. এখানে কিছু করার নাই. The more we try to push it, the more difficult it's going to create other issues,
Yeah.
So
I mean, in a way, I was just going to say, in a way, আমরা যদি এই পেইনটা আরো আগে থেকে ফিল করতে থাকতাম তাহলে হয়তো বা সাডেন পেইনটা এত অ্যাকিউট হইতো না.
সেটাই
better to face it now in a way.
সেটাই. So এখন which one is better? I'm not a macroeconomist, I'm not a politician. So এখানে sure, for a long time we enjoyed dollars at a lower rate. So as a consumer, of course, that was great. এখন suddenly spike করছে, ঠিক আছে. But the main thing is for the economy to function, you need to have predictable policies. As a multinational company or as a local trader, people need to have a rough idea of where the economy is headed. ওইটা এখন বলা খুব difficult. Some people say, dollar is going to go up to 200 Taka, like Pakistan যেভাবে depreciate করছে, Sri Lanka যেভাবে depreciate করছে, বাংলাদেশও করবে. I personally don't think it's going to be like that. But as a layman, as a consumer, our mindset is dollar is going to go up and it's going to continue going up. এখন যদি কম বাড়ে, I'm happy. Because everything starting from flights to anything imported that we have, everything's price is related to how much, if my salary is in Taka, my lifestyle gets significantly much more expensive related to the dollar. So I'm just
being realistic.
Being realistic about the worst case scenario, but hopefully it doesn't get there.
Yeah.
So that was one of the predictions. The other one was just that our government is under a lot of pressure to increase its own revenues.
Right.
So out of 170 million people, if you look at the registered taxpayers, it's very, very small. It's a tiny percentage.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to sort of squeeze more out of that same pie than it is to grow that pie. So much can I joke that anything starting from AIT to things like that will like increase because government is very difficult for them to enforce income tax compliance. So that's why we have like value-added tax, which is just an expenditure tax, right? Like, okay, we're not able to figure out your income tax, so we'll just put tax on your spending. So recently there were memes about a proposal for putting a VAT per head count বিয়েতে কারণ এখন এত lavish বিয়ে হচ্ছে per head count একটা VAT impose করবে. So things like that আর কি.
Yeah, I mean it's all playing out. So so far, unfortunately, it seems like you were on point. I want to kind of thank you for the time you've spent. I just want to leave us with maybe one or two more questions. One is, at the beginning, we spent a bunch of time on Deligram. Amra kotha bolechi about your lessons and all that. If you had to kind of recap for today's founders, right? Some of the lessons, maybe 2 or 3 lessons that you learned, having raised the money, having run the company, having gone through that whole cycle. What lessons or what reflections would you share?
So number one is it comes down. So first-time founders, people who have never founded anything, think it's all about branding and marketing.
It's not.
So you think, oh, if I can become the number one brand, everything else will get sorted. First-time founders who've actually started, they think it's about the product. Oh, I want to build the best technology, the smoothest customer experience. But second-time founders or founders who failed, they'll realize that no, it's about distribution and sales. It's about your actual traction. Whether your product is off the shelf, like a white label solution you're using to get traction, or you have a brilliant software team that's made everything in-house, that's irrelevant. It comes down to traction. So the fundraising ecosystem has changed a lot as well. So if I could go back, I would find a co-founder. I would not, at the initial stage, I would not spend money on having a very large tech team. Okay. I would either build it myself or I would find co-founders to build it. At the tech startup, biggest salary, biggest expense is salaries, tech salaries.
Right.
A good full stack developer, if you want them to leave a very comfortable job and join you, it's expensive if you're just starting out as a new company. So build a product somehow using your own savings, friends and family, get to product market fit on traction. Second of all, when you're pitching to investors, gone are the days where like I was lucky to have raised money with 0 traction, but based on a thesis, on an idea and the team. When we're investing right now, it's all based on traction. Even when you're raising at seed, it's based on a multiple. If you're a subscription company, it's a multiple of your annualized revenue. And so focus on traction first, then focus on fundraising. Keep burn to absolute minimum. Don't overinvest in product. Don't overinvest in marketing. Figure out what customer acquisition channels work and just focus on like increasing revenue or just increasing revenue. That's the number one traction. Revenue and unit economics. I can buy this for 80 Taka and sell this for 60 Taka and I'll sell 10,000 pieces. But it's that unit economic of after factoring in all my costs, at the end of the day, what is my profitability per order? And then once you get to that point, you can go to an investor to say, hey, on a per order basis, I'm profitable. I need $50,000 or $100,000 or $500,000 to go from 100 orders a day to 5,000 orders per day. And
then one last piece of advice for college students, because university thakte you started something or you were part of like a very high growth startup journey. What advice would you give to someone who একসময় entrepreneur হইতে চায় এখন ইউনিভার্সিটিতে আছে?
University thakte, I think it was probably the best time of my life, you know. first of all, when you wear the badge of a student, people are a lot more welcoming. Say you're at an event, if somebody walks up to you and says, oh, bhai, ami ei company te aasi, people don't give you that chance because like, oh, is he going to ask for a job? What is this person? Is he trying to sell something? Insurance sector product sell korte asche naki ki? But when you go as a student, people are a lot more open and willing to help you out. So when I was in university, before I was going, thankfully I came from a family where my father never really put too much pressure on grades.
So you were saying, thankfully your dad wasn't too concerned about grades.
Yeah. So one thing my dad told me is that I never learned anything in class. You'll not learn anything in class either. The real learning is outside in the real world once you step onto the streets. So I think that, of course, it was very nice, and I'm grateful that I didn't have that pressure that I have to get like a 4.0 GPA, have to get like be number one. My objective always was by class A, I need to pass, I can't fail, and I need to get an A. If I get a B, it's fine. If I get a C, it's a bummer, but I'll try to get a B or an A. So university thakte, in life you have like convergent times and then you have divergent times. Achha. What I mean by that is when you're confused, when you haven't figured out what you want to do in life, you basically, you diverge. You explore everything. So when I went to USC, I signed up for everything, starting from kickboxing to rock climbing to the USC Auto Club, to hikes, every single thing, just to explore what am I interested in. Same thing in terms of classes. Although I was studying engineering, I took classes in philosophy, in digital marketing, in family business management, just to really, I'm exploring and I'm trying to learn as much about everything. And then even when I came back to Dhaka, I tried exploring everything. What do I do? You have to explore and learn as much as possible. And then once you figure out that, okay, I want to do something in this offline to online space, you really converge.
Yeah.
When I cut out all the distractions and everything, your day and night, you're breathing omni-channel e-commerce, product, fundraise, everything. So as a student, if you know exactly what you want to do, like I want to be a lawyer or I want to be a doctor.
Which is very rare.
Which is very rare. You diverge. You converge onto that one thing, right? But if you're trying to figure life out, and this is not only relevant to students, like right now, after Deligram had shut down, I had basically again started diverging, right? I looked into apartments, real estate. I looked into the stock market in Bangladesh. I looked at what are new opportunities right now. And that's what also got me into my role at Sturgeon Capital, which is on the investment side, right? So as a student, I would use that advantage on campus, find who are the best professors, join the smartest kids in whatever, it's a robotics club, it's a whatever it is, meet as many people as possible, go meet industry insiders. A lot of people struggle to find a job straight out of university.
Right.
And when I was looking for a job, I hadn't decided. Bangladesh, if America, I should look for a job. So I was on the search. If I find a good opportunity, maybe I'll stay back for a year. So one thing that I had done back then was, as a fresh student, everything you're saying is a promise. It's not proven that you can do what you're saying you can do. So the best way as a student or even as a person looking to switch career is do the job for free to the right people, right? Like something you're very familiar with that, right? Jay, when I was looking for jobs in product management, I used to be a very avid user of this product called Medium, the blogging platform, right? So I used to be on Medium, I used to write, and I wanted a job in product management. So when Medium published their new product, their new version, their rebranding and everything, I wrote a 3-page long email with screenshots, with GIFs, with videos saying that, oh, these are features that I wish Medium had. I'm just a student, aspiring product manager, right? And I had sent it to Ev Williams, who's one of the co-founders of Twitter and then went on to found Medium, right? And he had forwarded it to his head of product. Amake respond koreni, amar response dorkar nei from Ev Williams. But a lot of the things that I had given in like my product review actually ended up, this could be a pure coincidence that I'm thinking in the same wavelength, but
which is good.
But Medium ended up implementing them. So but the cycle was so short that I can't take credit that our idea niye they actually improved it. It's probably anyways in the pipeline. But going back to basically the point that if I want to study product management, if I want a career in product management, Chaldal has an app, Pathao has an app. Go see what company you want to work at, review their product, give your value that you can create away for free. Worst case scenario, somebody who's in the industry will remember you for that. Worst case scenario, they'll never reply to you. Absolute worst case scenario, you might ask, hey, is there any opportunity where I can start working in your company as an intern, as a fresher? Worst case scenario, they'll say no.
But the best case scenario
is that they go like, sure, come join us, or work as a consultant. We're an early stage startup. This might convert into a full-time opportunity. So this is just for product management, but it's the same for anything. Like on I think that, if I was in their shoe, if I was running their business, what would I do differently?
Yeah.
And then if I have ideas, I just give it away for free. I don't try saying, I'm going to consultancy fee dite hobe, I want to ideas, because at the end of the day, ideas are useless unless they're implemented.
Makes so much sense. I wanted to ask you a lot more questions. Amar ekhane onekgula aro questions chilo, and I actually either read or I listened to most of the stuff you've put out there on the internet. I wanted to ask you about the Thiel Fellowship and a bunch of things. But today, I think we can call it a day. You've given us a lot to think about, to ponder, to kind of reflect upon. Hopefully, amra ekta round 2 korte parbo at some point in the future. Is there any last things that we should cover or anything you want to add?
No, not really. I think we've covered a lot.
I do have just one more. I lied. So, what is one quote or maxim ba emon kichu jeta you kind of think to yourself quite a bit, like a life philosophy or something, jeta you hold dear to heart?
I think the one thing that comes to mind is just the Stoic school of philosophy, that there's so many things to worry about. But if you can worry about only the things that are within your control, then you can work towards a solution. You can figure out. Otherwise, what we see is that acha dollar rate kothay jabe, eta ki hobe, what's happening with climate change. You can really start getting overwhelmed and then not be able to do anything. So this entire, and a lot of this Stoic philosophy is also overlaps with what we believe as Muslims as well, that whatever is not in your control, you leave up to Allah. Whatever's in your control, you go focus on that, do your best at that, right? So, oitai arki. If you want to stress, there's so many things you can stress about. But
just have to turn on the news.
You just have to turn on the news. So, oitai.
Makes a ton of sense. Ki jene ekta ache, there's some sort of, in other religions as well, sermon prayer na ki jene, serenity prayer. Again, just a quote that I happened to come across. God give me the strength to kind of control. God give me the strength to control what is in my control, and just
not worry about endure what is not in my control. Yeah,
makes so much sense. I can't think of a better place to kind of wrap this up. Thank you so much for making time.
No, it was my pleasure.